ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages. Welcome to the Equity.Guru Investor Roundtable. Feels like a little while since we've been on here, but we've got lots to talk about today. I'm Rob. That's Galen in the basement downstairs. Upstairs in the vault is none other than Vishal, and in the far corner is Fabi, feeling fabuli. We're going to talk about a mini sector today. It would be copper. We do talk about minerals on occasion and such, resources. Copper today. Very important commodity, if you will, for so many reasons, particularly as we look to the future of batteries and electric cars and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Vishal is going to start with a summary.
For sure, Rob. Yeah, so copper is near and dear to my heart. Just a few months ago, I wrote this article about copper investing for millennials, and I gave a pretty big rundown on the fundamentals of copper, where it's going, the future catalysts. We'll get to that in just a second. But recently, copper has been coming up on the headlines because, of course, a lot of us call it Dr. Copper. So copper is, it's a base metal, it's an industrial metal used when you're building things. And copper is perhaps signaling an impending recession. And, it already has, right? If you consider that it's in a bear market right now. And a cool fact about Dr. Copper is that copper has entered a bear market before each of the past 4 recessions. So if we're using that, stat, then this is now technically a 5th bear market and a 5th recession for copper. So a lot of people, have been focusing on that chart of copper. Technically, as I said, we still are in a bear market because even though copper bounced from about 314 there, we are still down around 26% from its high. So the 20% threshold is that bear market level. And I can talk about the technicals here in a bit, but really, I think the big idea for copper is that it is that green, that green metal, right? If you're going to electrify the economy, we're going to need more copper, and the copper markets have been hit by, like these strikes at the Escondida mine and what's the other mine in Indonesia? I can't remember. Grasberg, I believe that's the name of that mine. And of course, a lot of copper bulls say that there's not enough clean copper. So there's, specific type of copper that's, really good that you really need to mine, and that high grade copper is declining. So we need more cleaner copper concentrates out there. So it sets up this good long-term case, I guess you can say, for copper. And personally myself, and again, I talk about that in my investing article, that I think if we go into a recession, the next thing the governments are going to do is implement this large green infrastructure project. Think of it as like our new version of a New Deal. And that's going to, require a lot of copper in the future. But maybe we're just a few years away from that. So speaking about copper, we do have to mention gold a little bit here because usually both of these metals are found together. And just quickly, Northern Dynasty Minerals, I think it's a company that many of you have actually heard about, but we will be talking about them in future videos and articles. Of course, they have the world-class Pebble project, which has a lot of gold and a lot of copper. So if copper is going to be a hot commodity in the future for the green transition, then a project like this might be worth considering.
Yeah, and they have a lot of permit stuff going on that's taken years to get through with the Environmental Protection Agency.
Yeah.
And of course, there's Congo copper, and the fact the Chinese have a big stake in a lot of this as well, and that might not necessarily work out for people as we move along. You mentioned your article. You can also find that on the website as you after you watch this. If you haven't looked at it already, Michelle's article will be back up there. Sure. Abby, on copper.
I absolutely love copper long term, like Vishal has mentioned, for those same reasons. I think there's a lot of infrastructure work that needs to take place in already developed markets, developed countries. You go through Europe and through North America, there's a lot of stuff that was built in the 60s and the 70s that just doesn't cut it anymore. You go to the airports, you feel like it's going back in time. It's almost like a time machine compared to some of the airports you see in Asia and in other parts of the world. So I think there's a lot of demand coming. I just don't think it's for right now. I'm looking at real estate and construction because a lot of copper goes into construction. A big portion of the demand from copper is going into those sectors. And so I'm looking at, electronic equipment that sometimes depends on how well the economy is doing, because trust me, you use a lot more copper buying a big piece of machinery compared to your phone or something like a home computer or something like that, right? And so those sectors aren't really going very well. Then you look at real estate in general. There's a massive real estate crisis in China that's been a great driver for growth for so many years for copper and other metals. It doesn't look like it's going to be in the short term. Also in the US, a mortgage that used to cost $1,500 today costs $2,500. That is a massive, massive hit to the sector, and I think to short to midterm demand for copper. So absolutely love it long term. I think there's going to be shortages of good quality concentrate copper, but I don't think it's for right now. So yeah, mixed.
All right. Galen, you get to summate.
I agree with Fabi wholeheartedly on this one. Right now, the industry, in terms of supply and demand, is in a stable state. With the teetering real estate market, because copper is an industrial product, it's an industrial commodity. We can think about, consumer electronics and that kind of stuff, but realistically, it's power storage and running wire. That's basically copper's use. So you would have to have lots of infrastructure projects taking place to really sort of boost it. Now, as the economy changes, and we try to focus on, as Fabi was talking about earlier, updating construction that we have already put in play that was 40, 50 years old. We try to update that, and also to run for new grids and new power transfer and all that kind of lovely stuff. We're going to be using a lot more copper, but at this point in time, we're kind of in a dicey situation. Politically, we got to figure out where both China and Russia are going to end up on this side of the stick, because they are large producers, and also in China's case, a large consumer. And as Fabi pointed out, their real estate market is I don't know, it's a gong show right now. So the way things are heading, though, how the pressures we feel right now, there's quite possibly an opportunity for the demand and supply to switch around from where they're at right now, which is a stable position, into a supply deficit by probably around 2025. Again, based on all these sort of macro pressures like geopolitics and the world economy and how it's going to fare over the next little while. So getting in now is sort of an insurance, I guess you could say. It is important. It ain't going away. We're not going to replace it. And as Fabi and both Vishal mentioned, the good copper is in a technical short supply and will need a lot more of it as time goes on. And companies like Northern Dynasty, who have these massive projects, the Pebble Project, who are floundering at this point in time in terms of getting things permitted due to sort of public outrage, I suppose you could say, for lack of a better description, and also requirements on environmental permitting, are having their own share of challenges to try and bring this to production. But quite honestly, a project of that nature and that size is going to be incredibly productive and a huge contributor to our own economy, as I feel that the international supply of copper is going to dry up in one form or another.
I was just going to mention that also Chile, which is a massive copper producer, I think they produce up to 25% of worldwide
I think they're
copper.
the biggest one, aren't they?
They're the largest single producer as a country. They're getting kind of political with their copper production, with their mining projects. Things aren't as business friendly as they used to be in Chile. So that's something to watch out for. Projects outside of Chile as well.
Yeah, the Northern Dynasty thing has a lot to do with salmon. And although they've proven time and time again that they can't leak and they've got all the safeguards in place, they're still being harassed over the years. At least that's the way it would appear. You already brought up the charts there, Vishal. So what do you want to look at?
Yeah, I did. Just before we look at the charts, just two quick things I want to mention, maybe for the future. Number one, we both talked, or everyone here talked about Chinese demand. There's a bit of hope, and again, I'm not really bullish this country per se, but perhaps India, right, might be able to pick up that slump in the future. I know their copper demand is increasing because, trust me, India needs a lot more infrastructure. We're sort of lagging behind there in certain areas, and I think that would be huge for the demand for copper if India can get their act together. And then, secondly, another big factor for copper, which I think might be something to do with, well, you're already seeing it here, but I know a lot of this happens in the Middle East. But copper, when you contacted it, like kills like 99.9% of your bacteria or something. So in like new modern hospitals in the Middle East, they're
We're
making
already
all
seeing it on public transit.
Exactly. So I was going to say Tech Resources here in Vancouver is doing this pet project where they are putting copper on the rails of the buses and on the sky trains because, if you have like hundreds of people using that, their bacteria on their hands or whatever will be killed by that copper. But over in the Middle East and other, I guess, countries in Asia, perhaps as well, sorry, Southeast Asia, they're making the hospital beds, the frame is made out of copper. The doorknobs of the hospitals are also all copper. So I think there's a case to be made that that kind of demand in the future will also help the price of copper. But looking at the price of copper, I'm not really a big fan of it right now. I want to take you guys to the weekly chart where, yes, since 2020, copper did have a very, very nice rally, taking us up to 488 on May 10th of 2021. But then, for a few months, the price of copper just ranged. And for a technical trader like me, you have your uptrend, you have your range. The next thing to come is the downtrend, and that did trigger with that breakout in June, actually, of this year, June 13th, 2022, or that week, because this is the weekly chart. So I am looking for lower copper prices unless we can climb back above the $4 zone and confirm a nice strong close above $4. I think right now, technically, well, obviously, copper is still in a bear market, but I think we can make another leg, perhaps lower. And I think a lot of that's going to be doing with slowdowns, economic slowdowns, as maybe central banks continue to raise interest rates, even in a recession itself. So we'll figure that out, I guess, after Jackson Hole over the weekend, though.
Now, we usually send money around $7,500 each for individual companies. We don't always do it for sectors, but is anybody, let's just make this general. Anybody going to spend any money? Fabi, you go first. Can you spend any money right now on copper? Anybody?
I would hold on to it and watch and wait for a better entry. I want the chart to look worse.
Yeah.
Galen?
As Fabi pointed out, we still aren't out of the woods in terms of the stock market and commodity pricing and also the global economy. So I'm not going to say that this is like catching a knife because at this point I think it's going to be like it's a known factor and it's going to be a relatively long-term dip.
Yeah.
So I would wait for it to reach a relative bottom and then put my money in. Even though I do look down the road, I just figure at this point in time, there's a lot to lose in the short term as far as putting your cash down before. And that's me being Chicken Little, but whatever. It's how I feel the markets are right now. So I would rather wait. About 6 months. It's not going to take long for this to come to a head. So I think about 6 months down the road, we'll really get an idea of where the markets are truly at. And from there, I'll make my decision.
Okay. And it sounds like you're feeling the same way, Michelle, which doesn't mean people shouldn't pay attention to this sector or mini sector because
keep your eyes on it. Things will arise and it will be at bargain basement prices.
Yep.
Yeah, and the thing is, especially in the more speculative end of the market, sometimes you find a company that gets a hit, right? And so from having no copper to having some copper, you can still make money even though the commodity itself isn't going anywhere.
Good point.
Apples. Michelle, anything to tag?
Yeah, I'm doing the same thing. I'm just holding off here a little bit. There could be actually a bit of a rally here in copper in the next few days or weeks from the date of recording here. But again, I'm still waiting for that $4 zone to be taken out once again before I can get a bit more excited. But I do expect longer term there will be one more leg lower, perhaps maybe multiple legs lower, but I'm expecting one at least. But in the meantime, there might just be this bit of relief rally here, and I think a lot of people might jump on that, and they might get trapped. But we'll have to wait and see.
Don't get trapped, people. We can't guarantee future performance from past results or anything that we've told you, but you should definitely, as Galen affirmed, you should keep an eye on this thing because it will be interesting. And as Fabi said, hey, you never know, if you find a neat little company somewhere that's doing some exploring, they might be able to turn a corner. We will keep an eye on copper. We'll keep an eye on everybody. Galen, Fabi, Michelle, Bobby. See you on the next Equity Guru Investor Roundtable.